What's up, everybody? It's your girl, Nicole Banister, aka NIKKI BANZ, coming to you live from Nairobi, Kenya. And this is NIKKI BANZ Live. Oh yes! What an exciting time to be here, party people. Instead of coming to you from Cape Town, South Africa, which is normally where I'm filming my show, I'm sure you can tell I have a different background today. That's because I am in Nairobi, Kenya, and I'll be here for the next couple weeks. So you're gonna be seeing this background for the show as I film here in a brand new location. Me being in Kenya right now and not in South Africa, which is where I live, is totally on par for our guest tonight. He travels all over the world making amazing content and videos with over 700,000 followers across the internet, across Facebook, TikTok, YouTube, Instagram, all of the amazing platforms. I am so excited to have him here today. But before I get to that, thank you all for being here. It's always such a pleasure to be live with you here on NIKKI BANZ Live. Because I am in Nairobi, I have to say that today I actually have a live studio audience. There are two very cute cats who are here in the room with me today. Shout out to my girl Amani, who's letting me stay at her place while I'm in Nairobi, and her two cats, Winnie and Madiba, who are actually not live. They are passed out asleep. I guess NIKKI BANZ Live is not entertaining enough for them to stay awake during the show, but you know what? It's all Gucci, everybody. Oh my goodness. So shout out to everybody who's tuning into the Instagram Live right now, or if you're watching the rerun on YouTube, I love you, I see you, thank you for tuning in. If you're here live with me on Instagram, feel free to drop me some comments, give me a little flag, tell me where you're tuning in from. Do I have my folks from South Africa here today? Do I have my folks from Kenya here today? Who is tuning in and where are you based? I love it and I love to see it. So everybody, today's guest on NIKKI BANZ Live is none other than Uptin Saidi. He is an international journalist, he is a social media specialist and sensation, and he is an expert communicator. Literally, I work with him at Nas Academy, and he is actually literally teaching a course called 3 Ways to Communicate Your Brand. So I already know this is going to be an amazing interview. He just travels all over the world, makes amazing content, specifically at the intersection of technology and culture and money. I know he's here with us in the house today. What's up, Uptin? Can't wait to have you on in a second. I see we got folks turning in from all over the world. I see we got somebody in the chat saying that they're coming in from Sudan. Welcome. Shout out to the Sudanese diaspora. I love to see it. All right, party people, let me not talk to you any longer. I know I could talk to you all day, but honestly, my guest Uptin could also talk to you all day. So now is the time to start the show. I'm gonna bring him on. Honestly, I wanna do my sound effects, but like the way I'm seated, like I don't really have the computer that close to me. So we're just gonna pretend I'm doing a little drum roll. So I'm sure there's a drum roll going in your head right now. Let me bring Uptin on right now. Second ever guest on NIKKI BANZ Live of 2022, Uptin Saidi, my Persian brother. Oh my gosh, so many things to talk about, from jet setting to being Persian to being a public speaker. So many things. Are you ready? Are you ready? Are you ready? Let's get it. Now's the moment. I'm bringing him on. Here we go. Uptin Saidi live with NIKKI BANZ. Here we go.
What's up, Nikki? Wow, so much energy. I love it. It's 10 a.m. here in California. So yeah, the sun is shining. I'm excited to be here.
Oh my gosh, Uptin, so glad to be chatting with you here today. Thank you for waking up early. I know it's early for you in LA, but you know what? So much love. Thank you. Thank you.
No. 10 a.m. I think 10 a.m. is a globally acceptable time to be awake. So
right?
we're all good.
I think so too. Is it a globally acceptable time for a live interview?
Yes. I think anything after 7 a.m. I'm good. Totally good.
Ooh, 7. Okay, 7 is early. We might not want to put that live out there, you know?
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, Uptin, thank you so much for coming on. I always like to start off the show by telling people how I know the guests who are on the show. So you are my third guest from Nas Academy. We know each other through working for this awesome company where we're facilitating courses online about content creation, about communication, about public speaking, you know, navigating the world with confidence, all these things. And so I have been truly blessed to be a part of your course, specifically on communicating your brand. Let's hope I've learned some things from you in your course and communicate effectively today.
Well, you're doing great. You're doing great. You're definitely up there with the energy. So I think you could teach us all something about that.
Right? Right? I'm like, you know, if everything I say is just absolute nonsense, at least I'm saying it with energy, right?
Yeah. At least you make others feel alive. So that's important.
Exactly. Exactly. Okay. So Upton, there are like lists and lists and lists of accolades that I could say to talk about you. But since you are the expert communicator, I will ask you as my first question here of the interview today, when you meet new people, when you introduce yourself, what do you say? Introduce yourself here to all the people on NIKKI BANZ Live who are meeting you for the first time.
Okay, I love that. So hi everyone, my name is Uptin. I am a journalist and video creator. I was born in the US, lived in California, New York, and then 5 years ago, I left America. I lived in Singapore, I lived in Hong Kong, and then the pandemic happened, and I was working for CNBC, and I was kind of stuck in Hong Kong, no end in sight, couldn't even leave the apartment, couldn't go to the office, couldn't go meet people, couldn't go film anything. So I realized, you know, it was time. So it's time for me to break out on my own. So it's been just a little over a year now where I've been creating videos for my own brand. So I do YouTube, TikTok, Instagram, and one more, Facebook, yes. And yeah, as you mentioned, over the past year, I've grown to about 700,000 followers, which has been extremely exciting to be able to tell stories to such a global audience. I spent a lot of time in Lebanon, Turkey, Iraq, Saudi Arabia, Dubai, US, and now I'm rolling out some videos from Mexico. So yeah, but it's an interesting question, Nikki, when you say, you know, how do you introduce yourself? Because I tend to wear a lot of hats, and I think nowadays, you know, it's 2021, so many of us wear so many hats. I think it's important that you modify your introduction to your audience, right? So clearly I'm on Instagram Live, so I'm going to talk a little bit more about my journey as a video creator. But what a lot of people don't know is I have clients. I have my own clients where I make videos for, mostly corporates, right? So obviously I'll modify that a little bit to talk more about that. And I think that's okay. I think we should have multiple different introductions for ourselves. Like we should have maybe 2 to even 5, right? 5. I mean, think about how many people are, you know, selling stuff on the side. They're selling courses online. Maybe they're even like a doctor and they're a YouTuber. You know, there's so many different things. So it's okay to have multiple intros, and I think we should actually hone in on those different hats that we're wearing.
Oh my goodness. Okay, well that introduction in itself was already phenomenal. But I see you're already dropping wisdom and dropping bars for us about how to introduce ourselves in different contexts and different scenarios. And you're absolutely right. And I think it's something that people like need to be told. Like maybe some people do this naturally, but yeah, like when I go speak in front of a group of diplomats and ambassadors and people in the development space, I'm gonna introduce myself as one way, but here on an IG Live, it's gonna be different. And it should be. We should shift, you know?
Yeah, and it's funny because I remember Mark Zuckerberg, he said a couple years ago, he said, or actually maybe 10 years ago now, he said, you know, we're known as different people. You're your work version, you're your family version, you're your friend version. And he said, Facebook, my goal with Facebook is to make it so that you're just one version. And it's like, and looking at his quote, you know, 10 years later, it's like yes and no, right? Yes, you know, yes, we're much more authentic, right? Our coworkers know us probably a lot more than they would have 10 years ago just because they're following us on, let's say, Instagram. But also, no, because you can be different. I guess authenticity, yes, you're the same, but you can wear different hats. You can do different projects. You can do different things. I know someone who is a TV producer, but she also picked up a DSLR camera and taught herself how to take pictures. And now she's making thousands of dollars a month just being like her local town's professional photographer, right? Especially as a woman, a lot of moms would prefer to work with a woman than like a man, that's per se, right? And so she's wearing multiple hats. She's also a YouTuber. So she's a YouTuber, a photographer, and her day job is a TV producer. Oh, and she's a mom to 3, right? So this is someone who's wearing multiple hats that we really couldn't see, let's say, 10 years ago. You know, we all kind of just worked in one capacity.
Yes, 100%. And I love that you're sharing that story because you're absolutely right that as time goes on, we shift, we navigate, we have different careers, we do different things, but it's all like, it all makes up this unique part of who we are and what we put out there to the world. And I think building on that, Upton, that brings me to another question. And my question for you is, you've done public speaking in so many different capacities, right? Whether it is, being a journalist with CNBC International, being a reporter, facilitating courses online, creating amazing content on YouTube and online. So when did you first know that you had a knack for public speaking? Like, was it early on when you were really young? Like, were there public speaking gigs that you picked up? Or when did you realize that you could command a crowd and speak in public like this?
Well, I've always, I think for me, actually, I started out with journalism, and we were asked to actually, I took a class at NYU, and they said, what was your first memory of journalism? And everyone was sharing these moments where they stood for justice and this and that. And I thought about it, and I realized my first memory, I think I was like 10 or 11 years old, and we had to write an article for like our class newspaper, and me and some other students went to the local pizza place, the new pizza place like next to the school, and the owner of the pizza place like took us to the kitchen, the back kitchen, and gave us free pizza. And then I wrote the article, and then I was like, wait, is that why I got into journalism? Because I was a kid who got free pizza. So it was a little bit kind of like, it took some soul searching after that. But yeah, so for me, more than public speaking, actually, it's been about journalism, telling stories. This thing happened to me, and I have to share it with others. And so what's interesting is, like, in right after college, I started taking a lot of classes. I took comedy writing. I started taking article writing, business writing, and so my thing was actually writing, screenwriting. I wrote a full feature screenplay, and so for me it was always about, like, yeah, how do I tell stories? And trying to find my craft. Do I want to be a novelist? Do I want to be like a screenwriter? Do I want to I tried stand-up comedy, just twice, but like, so for me, it was never actually about public speaking per se. It was about storytelling. And then as the medium evolved, specifically technology, social media evolved, then I started to plug into that. So, and I tell people, like, yeah, you'll see my face on all my videos, but if that was not trendy, like if that was not effective, if that was not a powerful way of storytelling in 2021, you wouldn't see my face. You would maybe see just voiceover, or you would maybe, at most voiceover, right? And so I'm all about like adapting to the medium to tell the best story and to reach the biggest audience. And so for now, it happens to be, selfie mode. Get out your camera, tell a story on TikTok, tell a story on Instagram in selfie mode, right? And that's just what it's become. So for me, so I think public speaking was a large part of, like, in order to reach an audience, I need to speak to an audience, and to speak to an audience, how do I do that best? So I actually did live TV reporting at CNBC in Hong Kong, in Singapore. And again, because that was the way in which I was able to express my storytelling desires.
And I think what you just mentioned right now, Upton, about adapting to the medium that sort of best suits the people, that best suits the time, is something that you've been able to navigate and finesse so seamlessly. And I think, I think a lot of people have a lot of questions, not only about, your time as a reporter and as a journalist and the storytelling that you did for a sort of a big corporation and a big media house, but then also transitioning to doing your own thing and being an entrepreneur. So maybe I'll take it back. I'll take it back a little bit, and I'll ask, you did your undergraduate degree, you started taking all these really interesting courses about, storytelling and comedy and all these things that you just mentioned. What was the transition for you, like from undergrad or from college, and then getting into CNBC International? What was that process like for you? Was it as simple as just applying, or what did it look like?
No, yeah. So I actually was recruited to be a consultant in New York City while I was at George Washington University. I studied finance. I studied international business. So I was a consultant. And then the company laid us all off. They were like, oh, we hired way too many of you, so we don't need you. And so I had to make a decision. I'm like, do I stay in New York, or do I move to California? And I actually got a call from a temp agency, and they were like, hey, yeah, we could use you as a receptionist, an on-call receptionist. I had a degree in finance, But I was like, yeah, sure, why not? You know, I can make some money. So I remember I would wake up around 6 or 7, and then they would call me and be like, oh, a lawyer called out sick in financial district. You need to go, you know. So I would like literally put on a suit, go and work as a receptionist for a day at a random law firm, an accounting firm. Condé Nast. Sometimes I would get called into Condé Nast, so I would like do the Vogue, the GQ. You know, I'd be literally the receptionist because the person called in sick that day. And you know, again, it would be like, it could be very demoralizing for someone who worked as a consultant and has a finance degree. But for me, it was exciting, and I think perspective is so important. How people have perspective. You know, for me, it was like, wow, I don't know where today's going to take me. I'm going into a random company, a random office within New York, and I get to be part of the team for a day. You know, making very little money, but again, it was something, right? And so for me, that was really important, that I just said yes. I constantly said yes, and I ended up working as a production assistant for MTV. So I worked on Silent Library. I worked on a show called Cash Cab, which isn't MTV, it's Discovery Channel. But so I spent about, you know, 6 to 12 months working as a PA, going to Costco, buying snacks. You know, at one point I had to clean the bathroom because Jimmy Fallon was coming on the show, and they needed someone to clean the bathroom because we rented a studio. So yeah, it was like, they looked at me, they're like, it's a bit dirty. And I was just like, all right, rolled up my sleeves, literally scrubbing the toilet. And then sure enough, Jimmy Fallon came the next day, whatever. So for me, it was always about, you know, just saying yes. You know, I kind of assumed to break into media, it was going to be a struggle. And then I worked, and then I was a PA, and then I got, I started to like become obsessed with MTV News. I was like, these are people that are the new media, because MTV News was mostly a website. They were doing videos, they were on Instagram, you know. And I was like, okay, I need to get into MTV News. So I like kind of stalked the people on LinkedIn and DM'd some people and got an interview, got the job. And then I spent 2 years at MTV News. And I always thought of my time at MTV News as graduate school. It was like graduate school for media, because I learned how to edit, I learned how to storytell, I learned how to write articles. And I mean, talk about a bare bones, fake it till you make it organization. That was MTV News. You know, very low budget. Half the team, we weren't even salary employees. We were just like permanent freelance, no insurance, you know, none of that. But I learned how to do everything. And I remember once, Nikki, they were like, we need you to go interview Kelly Rowland. And I was like, oh, the girl from Destiny's Child, like, sure. And they're like, and take a camera. So they were going to have me like go film an interview with Kelly Rowland. I'd never done an interview on a red carpet. I'd never filmed anyone before. And they quickly, in 10 minutes, taught me how to use a DSLR Sony camera. So I go there, and there's all these other people from like CNN, Entertainment Tonight. And I remember, you know, they're twice my age. And I asked them, I was like, can you check my camera settings? Because I want to make sure I don't do this wrong. And they're giving me like, you're from MTV News. You know, I had an MTV News microphone. And so again, like, I just saw this, I didn't see this as unjust or unfair. I saw this as an insanely amazing opportunity. So I did that. But after a while, Nikki, you get burnt out. I was on call because Justin Bieber was going to break up with his girlfriend, Selena Gomez. There were rumors that over the weekend he might break up with Selena Gomez. And so my boss, he comes in and he's like, hey, I need you to come into the office. If it happens, check your phone, be on your phone, you know, don't go to yoga, don't go to the movies. You need to like have your phone on you in case Justin Bieber breaks up with his girlfriend. So that's kind of my breaking point. I'm like, all right, you know, there's doctors who are on call, and here I am on call in case Justin Bieber breaks up with his girlfriend. So I started to apply for jobs. I started to apply like CNN, Al Jazeera, NPR, and I got a call from CNBC. And I remember thinking like, ooh, I don't know, it's kind of, you know, stock market, it's a bit heavy. I don't know if I really want to work for CNBC. But then I remember this was 2014. I remember I was like, you know what? So much of business news is actually entrepreneurship. It's tech, it's Airbnb, it's WeWork, it's you know, Uber. These were the emergence of these big tech companies where you had people that were my age, you know, dropping out of Wall Street, moving to Silicon Valley, doing their startup. So it was a really exciting time. And I was like, you know, business news is not just about, you know, investing in stocks. It's about entrepreneurship. It's about tech. It's about changing the way we're going to live. So I said yes, and it was an incredible experience.
Wow. Okay, you have just shared so many things I actually never knew about you. I mean, I knew about the stint at MTV News, but who knew that for so long you were just like hopping around as a PA, taking all these different opportunities. And I think to me, Uptin, that is just such another sort of demonstration of resilience, of knowing that like everything that you're doing is going to lead to this greater goal. And I think so many people forget that. And if they see someone like you and they're like, wow, this guy is on the side of buses. He was, you know, reporting for CNBC International. Now he's got hundreds of thousands of followers online. And like, no one would ever sit here and think that you were cleaning toilets, right? Like in preparation for a superstar to come in. And that's what I like. That's what I love. That's why I love interviewing people like this. That's why I love talking to you. Like, this is so interesting. And that honesty and that realness comes through in the stories that you tell today and the types of content that you share. And so you mentioned a little bit about how you started getting more into the sort of entrepreneurial side of things, the tech, you know, the money and that intersection. So was it really like the job at CNBC International that then launched you into starting to talk about tech and money and culture? Or were those, I mean, I know you had studied international business at school. Is that kind of how it got started? I'd be super curious to hear more about that. Also, I'm seeing now that Uptin looks like he's frozen. I don't know if it's just me. Oh my gosh, I have been having rolling electricity blackouts in Kenya all day today. So it very much could be internet on my end. Oh no, I lost Uptin. Okay, party people, are you still with me? Can you still hear me? Can you still see me? If yes, please type it in the comments, because like I said, the electricity and the Wi-Fi has been totally awful in Kenya today, so I can't really tell if it's me or if it's him, but I'm gonna keep my fingers crossed that we just lost him and he'll come back. I think he's back now. I'm not seeing anything in the comments, so fingers crossed he's just gonna hop back on right now. Okay, someone is saying, you're good. Ram Yunus, I'm good. Okay, thank you. Shout out. Thank you. Thank you, Rue. Thanks.
All right. Yes, hi. Okay, so yeah, a series of unfortunate things happened. So, okay, so I kind of heard the end of your question. How did I choose tech, money, cultures?
Yes, that's what I was going to ask you about, because you started talking about, like, obviously you studied international business at GW, and then you started talking about how you were getting more into the entrepreneurial side of things. Also, very quick segue before you answer that question, shout out to Washington, D.C. I actually didn't realize until I was doing my research for you that you went to GW, because, you know, I went to Georgetown.
Oh, I had no idea. No way. Wow. Oh, wow.
Exactly. I know, I'm
well,
like two Cali kids who upped and went to the East Coast, who went to the district. Very cool, Upton.
Yes, how funny that became international. Yeah, I didn't get into Georgetown, so yeah, I hope you enjoyed it, Nikki.
Honestly, we could have been, I don't know when you graduated, but we could have been there at the same time.
Maybe, yeah, we would always do our nice dinners in Georgetown. But yeah, so I think on that note, so I kind of, so once I was at CNBC, it was an amazing opportunity. And, you know, it was a night and day, right? I came from MTV where you wear jeans, you wear shorts, to CNBC where everyone's wearing, you know, suit and tie, or at least, you know, a set business casual. And we're live on television from, you know, 6 a.m. to 6 p.m. Everyone's wearing suits and microphones, and it's, you know, much more intellectual audience and mature audience and older audience and colleagues. And so, but it was amazing, you know, so I was a TV producer, but after about a year, Nikki, I wasn't fulfilled, because what was happening is I would find these guests, you know, sometimes entrepreneurs, sometimes CEOs, and I would put them on my show. And the anchor of my show would, you know, they had to do 10, 20 segments per hour, right? So they would literally get my notes that I spent, you know, 2 days working on. They would get my notes, ask a couple questions, move on to the next. And I would be like, no, like I could have done it better, or why didn't you ask that question, you know? So I realized I needed to actually be a reporter. I cannot just be a producer. I need to actually own my own stories. And so in order to go onto the on-camera reporting thing in the US, you really have to go, if you're living in New York, you have to go small town or international. You know, you cannot break. It's really, really rare for someone to just like break into it being off camera and being on camera in New York. So my options were move to like Milwaukee, or I mean, even Milwaukee would probably be big. It would be like move to a small town in, you know, Oklahoma or Missouri or something, or Albany, New York, right? And get 1 or 2 years experience, and then say, hey, like, look at me, I've been on camera. Or to go international. And I definitely didn't want to go local, because a lot of local news is, you know, murders, fires, you know, school board meetings, things like that. So I was like, hey, why don't I go international? So I kind of banged on some doors internally, and eventually they said, yeah, we'll send you international. And I was like, okay, how about London, Dubai? And they were like, how about Singapore? I was like, okay, I didn't know much about Singapore, but you know, of course I said yes. So I took a one-way flight to Singapore. I had never been to Singapore, and you know, and so I started doing live television. I would wake up at 5 a.m., do live television, which was exciting, adrenaline, you know, live camera presenting. It was amazing. But then they came to me and they said, hey, we want to launch a YouTube channel. Why don't you help us with that? And so, and I told my boss at the time, I said, I didn't move all across the world to make a bunch of YouTube videos, you know? And he was like, I wouldn't discount the potential growth of YouTube and digital video. And I'm so glad I listened, you know, I'm so glad he told that to me, because sure enough, I started making videos on YouTube and I realized like, oh, if you make a video on YouTube, someone back home in the US can watch it anytime, any place, right? Versus live TV, I was very limited. You either had to be like in Asia, you had to subscribe to the channel and you had to watch it live. Otherwise you missed it and you had to have the access to the channel, right? YouTube and digital video completely disrupted all of that. So I started to make a lot of videos about things that were involved to this important to the CNBC audience, which is money, economics, entrepreneurship. And I just became in love with it. I said, no one's really telling stories about money. No one's really telling stories about entrepreneurship. And I got to go to mainland China, go to Alibaba, Tencent, Huawei, Xiaomi, go to the biggest tech companies in the world that most people in America had never heard of. And I got to tell stories, you know? So I think for me, it just became a passion of mine to tell stories, because it's like, wait, no one's talking about Huawei, you know? And Huawei became the biggest smartphone maker in the world at one point, right? Everyone's talking about Apple, Samsung, but who's talking about Huawei? And here I was going to Huawei's campus. So for me, I've always had an interest in tech, and I think money too. You know, a lot of times people don't like to talk about money. It's taboo and this and that, but it's like money impacts everything. You know, it's not good, it's not bad, but it impacts everything. And I think I've been able to like grow my audience a lot by going to that place and talking about like Lebanon's inflation crisis, talking about the US inflation, you know, talking about minimum wage, talking about entrepreneurs making money, talking about Bitcoin, things like that.
Yes, yes, yes. And I think what I am just loving about this story from you right now, Upton, about your journey to just saying yes to a job in Singapore, moving overseas completely, and now looking at your content, right, from Lebanon, from Turkey, from Mexico, from Dubai, you're all over the place, right? But had you actually lived overseas before, or was that your first time moving overseas?
Yeah, no, never. I had never like been outside the US for more than a couple weeks, you know. So yeah, Singapore was a big change for me. It was a you know, one-way ticket, and you know, humidity, different culture, very, very humid, you know, sunrise to sunset, 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. year round. So it was definitely a little bit of a shock. I mean, it's still, they call it Asia light because it's a very westernized country, but it was still a big deal, you know, it's still a big deal. And I think for me, the misconception happened for me was, you know, I would go to France for a week or Italy for a week or whatever while living in New York, like, oh my God, it's so amazing to travel, right? And then now here I was, I'm like, oh, I got to live abroad. This is going to be permanent vacation, right? But I was actually wrong. It was actually really hard. And I think sometimes people who are, you know, living in one country and want to move to another country, they have misguided conceptions. And I'm curious your thoughts on that too, because we think like, oh my God, it's gonna be so glamorous to live in Paris or Singapore, whatever. But in reality, you're losing your entire network. You're losing your family. You're losing your friend. You're losing everything you're familiar with, the foods, the restaurants, everything. And so it's not saying don't do it, but you know, just have a more realistic expectation of what that's going to be like. There are going to be good days. There are going to be bad days. Even moving to New York City, so many people I knew moved to New York City and were like, I hate it here, Upton. And I would tell them, I'm like, you have to do it for 1 year. Do it for 1 year before you make any decision, because New York can be very tough to live in, very tough to live in. And of course, so what you'll find is your first year, there's a lot of amazing days and a lot of bad days. But after you do it for a year, you kind of stabilize, you know? So I think that's the same thing with moving abroad, moving to another country.
You're spot on, Upton. And you know, I mean, obviously you have your course at Nas Academy that you teach. My course on, you know, which is called Travel the World Like a Pro. You know, that's literally one of the things that I talk about. You know, it's where you don't have to travel internationally. You don't have to travel overseas to have a radically different cultural experience, right? Just moving from LA to New York, you can have a radically different
Yes.
experience. right? Like people are different, the food is different, the way people dress is different. Like, you know, I'm sure you experienced that when you went to DC. And Upton, I have to say, I swear, you and I are like low-key living parallel lives. I also lived in Singapore.
Oh my God, I don't think I knew that. That's crazy.
I know, I'm like, we're learning so much about each other. This is why I love the show. But yes, I lived in Singapore for my first 2 years of high school because my dad worked in oil. And so, you know, after we had been living in Texas, we then moved to Singapore, and I went to the American school there when I was in high school. But yes, you're spot on. You're moving to a place where, you know, oftentimes nobody looks like you. Nobody speaks the same language as you. The food is totally different. The dance is different. Public transportation, currency, everything. You know, and I think one of the things that really stands out to me about the content that you make now, you know, since you've left your, you know, your reporting job, your journalist job, is that you are exploring all the nuances of culture at the intersection, you know, of tech and money, which is what you love and which is what you're passionate about. And so, like, when you're traveling to all these new places for your YouTube videos or Instagram or TikTok or whatever, how do you decide where to go? How do you make those decisions? And then once you're there, how do you decide what those topics are going to be?
Yeah, great question. So it kind of, I'm very much with like go with the flow. Like, so I was, I mean, it's funny. I just kind of fell into these stories. And I think that's at the core, that's what journalism is. It's like, oh, wait, what? You know, asking questions like, wait, I want to learn more. And so what happened is in February, I was like, I'm going to move to Dubai. I'm going to set up my business. I'm just going to move to Dubai. So I bought a one-way flight from LA to Dubai. And then I needed to leave Dubai after 30 days because my tourist visa was up. So I was like, you know what, I'll just go to Turkey for a week and then I'll come back. But then in Turkey, I fell in love with the people. Of course, I had been on vacation, but I'd never, you know, spent that much time there. I fell in love with the people. I learned about the currency. I learned about the money issues that people are faced with, the fluctuating currency, or why is Apple the most expensive country? You know, Apple products are the most expensive in Turkey compared to almost every other country. You know, so like I was learning all these things just by meeting people. And so I ended up staying 2 months, and I did a mini documentary about Turkey's currency. It's like Turkey's currency is down 10-15%. This is making life very challenging for some people. And literally hundreds of Lebanese commented, they're like, try Lebanon, where our currency's down 90%. So then I was like, oh, okay, like, let me go to Lebanon. So again, I was like on my way back to Dubai. On my way to Dubai, I was going to go to Lebanon for 1 week, and then ended up, you know, meeting amazing people, and again, the culture, the food, and ended up staying for over 2 months. So I think a lot of it is like being adaptable and amenable. It's like having an idea. Like I was just in Mexico, right? So it's like I'm going to Mexico. It was a vacation, but also like I'm always looking for the stories, right? And so sometimes there's structure. So I have a series. It's like a cash budget series. So it's like $100 day in New York or $30 day in Istanbul, right? And it's about breakfast, lunch, dinner. Like I take you through a full day, show you what you can get with the money. And it's not about being cheap, or it's not about splurging, but finding that perfect optimum day to spend the day. So I have some structure. It's like, okay, I'm going to Mexico. I'll knock out a $50 day in Mexico City video, right? But then it's also like, ooh, you know what would be interesting is like, I'm in Mexico right now. I tried to order a burrito. I tried to order a taco. I tried to order an enchilada, a fajita. And this restaurant says, we don't have any of that. And I'm like, wait, but I'm at a Mexican restaurant, right? And so I'm like, oh, wait a minute. I'm used to American Mexican food. Mexican food in Mexico is not the same. This is crazy. Like, I need to learn more. And I need to turn on my camera and film this and make a mini documentary about it. And sure enough, I did. So and that just came out on YouTube, and I'm posting it on Instagram today. So that's about comparing, you know, like Mexican food in America, even Los Angeles, with Mexico City. Why is it so different? How is it different? And it comes down to, you know, America, we love to mass produce and preserve and freeze stuff, you know? So in terms of ideas, there's never, it's funny when when content creators will be like, how do you come up with so many ideas? I say, well, for me, it's the opposite. It's like, ooh, I need to be a little bit more discerning and say, no, I don't have time for that. No, it's a decent idea, but I'm not going to do it. Right. I think, you know, if you're curious, you'll never run out of ideas. There's always things to ask, questions to ask.
Yes. Yes, I think your curiosity is something that has taken you so far, literally around the world. And I love that reminder to just be curious, especially when traveling, especially when meeting new people, going to new places. All the questions that you ask, all the content that you share in your videos, Upton, are 100% things that like people want to know, that people talk about, that like the day-to-day conversations that come up, right? And I think what you so brilliantly do is then tell that story, share that narrative. You know, and I started watching your videos sort of about the, you know, Mexican food in Mexico versus American Mexican food, right? And you started at Taco Bell, right? Which, like, for so many Americans that, you know, they're like, oh, Taco Bell is Mexican food, and it's like, no, no, it's not. Right? And it's like, it's so simple for, I think, for those of us who travel and get around, but it's like, actually, these are the types of stories that we should be sharing. These are the types of content that, you know, and things that people want to hear. And so Upton, okay, I'm looking at the time here. We've got about 25 minutes left of the interview. For everybody who's tuning in live here right now, there's so many of you on. Thanks for your comments. Thanks for hollering in the chat. If you have questions for Upton, I will ask them during the last 10, 15 minutes of the show. If you look on the bottom of your IG Live, at the bottom of the phone, there's like a little thought bubble with a question mark there. Click on that, type your questions for Upton, and I will get to them in the last 10, 15 minutes. If you type them in the chat, I won't see them. The chat's going by way too fast. But put them there in that little thought bubble, and I will be sure to ask those questions. So my next question for you, though, since, you know, I got the interview right now. I'm the reporter today, Upton. My next question is, you know, you're talking a lot about culture. You're talking a lot about traveling to these different places and learning more about the day-to-day lives, learning more about the currency, learning about how different products move and flow through these places. And I would be totally remiss if I didn't talk about the fact that you're Persian and that you are Iranian American. And, you know, myself, my mom is from Iran, so this is something that I love. Even when I first heard about you at Nas Academy, I saw your last name, you know, the Saidi. I was like, this might be a Persian, you know. that characteristic, you know, the, you know, last name. So how does your Persian background, heritage, culture influence the way that you move through the world, or the types of stories that you tell, you know, or does it? Because I've been seeing that you recently have been posting more and more content, like, this is how you say something in Farsi, this is how you say something in Turkish, you know, or things like that. So I'd be curious to hear more about how your Iranian American identity sort of helps you shift or move through the world, or not.
Yeah, it's a great question. So I think for me, it's about, it's part of me, but it's not, you know, it doesn't define me, I think. And it doesn't define, I think, any of us. Like, and I think that's the beauty about growing up in the US. Like, it's so funny, you know, I don't know if this happens to you, but every time I come back to the US, like, I went for a hike 2 days ago, and I saw, you know, every single race within a matter of 5 minutes. And I saw, you know, an Asian talking to, you know, hiking with a Black woman. And it was just really cool. You know, I'm like, oh yeah, this is what makes America so amazing, is this diversity, is that we are, like, all of us are American, you know? And I forget that. And I think sometimes what happens is, you know, most of these countries that I've gone to are very homogeneous. You know, Turkey is 99% Turkish. Iran is 99% Iranian. Saudi is a bit different. There's actually a lot of immigrants who live there. But for the most part, I think it's a reminder of what makes America so amazing, is the diversity. And when it comes to me, you know, I haven't done a lot of videos on Iranian culture or Persian things, and I think that's because I want to make sure I do it right. So like, for instance, the documentaries that I've done in Lebanon and Turkey, now coming from Mexico, it's like, you know, I'm the journalist, right? I'm like the Mexican food one, I'm the dumb American, right? I'm the one who thought burritos are Mexican, right? I'm just the dumb American who's like, but wait, it says Mexican food and I'm eating a burrito. And then I go to Mexico and everyone's like, no, we don't have that, you know? And so I want to bring my audience on a journey of learning with me, you know? And so in this Mexican food documentary, it's like, it's a lot about, like, wait a minute, I thought this was Mexican, but now I'm learning it's not. So my conclusion is, is Mexican food in America is amazing. It's delicious, but it's not really Mexican, and it's definitely not very healthy compared to what Mexican food is supposed to be. So I'm learning with you. Now I have a lot of ideas, like why are there so many Iranians in California? You know, I have a lot. I would love to go to Westwood and do so many things about, you know, Iranian culture. And I'm planning on doing it. But again, I want to do it in a way, it's not that I struggle with it, but it's going to be a little bit more challenging because again, as a journalist, I don't want to come and preach to you. I don't want to preach to you and be like, I'm Iranian. This is what the true Iranian people are like, and da 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 da. Right. So it's like, ironically, even though I know, you know, I live and breathe it, it's going to be more challenging for me than another culture, because the other culture, I'm just kind of the fish out of water, learning and exploring about it. So for me, like, yeah, I'll do TikToks that incorporate my culture, Iranian culture, Persian culture, my Persian parents, things like that. But in a fun way, in a lighthearted, fun, silly way. I definitely haven't, you know, tackled anything too big yet.
Yeah. No, and I think that makes absolute sense. And it's a good reminder that as the journalist, yeah, you're the one who's just sharing the stories. It's not your own stories that you're telling, right? You're just navigating through different spaces and places and telling other people's stories. And when it's personal, when it's your own, like, yeah, there is that, like, there's that pressure to make sure you do it right.
Yeah, and also finding that balance of how much of yourself you want to give, you know. It's kind of funny, like, so as a journalist, you know, as a trained journalist for CNBC, it was like we learn, like, you every story is unbiased, and you balance it, you know. For everyone who says this, there's someone who says that, and you present the facts. And so for me, even like my language in this new documentary, it's more about, like, I used more words that I wouldn't have used a year ago. Like, how did we manage to mess it up? How did we manage to mess up Mexican food, right? Like, I wouldn't have even said that a year ago because it would be, like, too opinionated. And I've gotten into fights with, not fights, but like nice discussions with Nas Daily about that, where he'll give me feedback and he'll say, you're just presenting the situation, you're presenting the facts. You need to say why this is the best country on earth, or this is the worst country on earth, or this is the best this, the best that. And I am morally, I cannot do that. I'm like, no, but like, no, like, I'm just a journalist. And you know, I respect the conversation and I respect the advice, and I do understand the importance of that. We've become very lazy as audience, as consumers. We just want to know we want to know what and how we should feel about it, right? We no longer just want to know the what. We want to know the what and why it matters and what we should feel, right? Because that's what's going to make someone share your video. It's an opinion. It's not so much of a fact, right? So but I kind of, you know, I stand by where my position is, which is like, no, you know, and Saudi Arabia was a good example, right? I went into Saudi Arabia, and it's like, there's a lot of critics of the kingdom, and there's a lot of people who are very excited about the reforms that are happening. So me going into Saudi Arabia for the first time, I had to just go in as somebody who, you know, who's genuinely just interested in learning. And, you know, I interviewed 4 women in one of my videos, and you know, the title certainly is not going to be, oh, how Saudi Arabia is changing and women are excited in Saudi, right? Because that's just 4 interviews. And so much so that I even made a claim at the beginning of the video, which I normally don't do things like this, but I was like, it's important to note that this is just 4 women. And all of these 4 women represent a progressive side of the government that are not only willing to talk to me, but they're excited to talk to me. I don't know how many people are, you know, potentially afraid of talking to a journalist, or, you know, not able to talk to her, or whatever, right? So I don't want to give the impression of, you know, so I'm still very, very much of a journalist. And I think with everything, like Lebanon, you know, things have become very cheap, but cheap for foreigners. They're extremely expensive for locals. And so it's like, every time I even made a video about Lebanon, I made sure to say, like, whoa, don't take this out of context. You know, there's a currency crisis here, which is like, yeah, it's cool if you're a tourist right now, but if you're living here, life has become insanely difficult. And I think, I guess providing context is so important. And it kind of scares me. It kind of scares me what's capable of people as content creators. You know, it's kind of scary what people can do, you know, that misinformation or just, like, you know, misperceived information because they didn't give the right context.
And I think providing that context, Upton, is what gives your videos and the content that you do share such integrity, because the perspective from us having, you know, lived and grown up in the United States versus people actually living in those countries, you know, how do you create content that's dynamic, that sort of speaks to all sides, that someone from Lebanon watching feels like you represented their country in an authentic light, but that your people in America or Dubai or Saudi or wherever else are also watching and learning something new, and knowing, you know, how the context can shift depending on where you are, or, you know, or who's in that place. I think these are all like really important points to remember. And so, you know, thinking about that transition for you from sort of full-time journalist working for this sort of, you know, big media corporation, and then going into content creation, which has been, you know, of the last year plus, you know, you have seen this like tremendous growth and this tremendous success, and has that been has it been like exciting for you the whole time, this whole journey, sort of growing all your different followings? Has it been a lot of ups and downs? What's it been like for you transitioning from that sort of that full-time journalist who had very specific and sort of very specific content that you were sort of meant to be sharing, and now being able to talk about whatever you want, whenever you want, and doing it your own way?
Yeah, great question. So I think for me, it was all about expectation. So when I left CNBC, and, you know, I actually didn't think I was going to be my own video creator, to be honest. I was like, I was literally going to go work for a company. I was applying to work at Facebook or Airbnb. I mean, this was just a year and a half, not even a year and a half ago, you know? And then I remember every time I would send off a resume or email one of my contacts, I would feel this like sick feeling in my gut. And I'm like, what is that? Like, I should be excited for the prospect of working for Airbnb or something. And then I realized, I'm like, deep down, I knew what I needed to do, and that was to work for myself and to tell my own stories, you know? And again, that came from that intuitive, like, you know, that yoga, once in a while yoga class, right? But then I did a call actually with Nas Daily. It was one of my first calls with him, and Drew Binsky, who's a really good friend of mine. Both of them separately said, why don't you just make your own videos? And I was like, and they're like, I don't tell most people that, but I've seen your stuff for CNBC, and, you know, it'll take some time to grow, but why don't you just make your own videos? And I swear, Nikki, even then it wasn't an exciting thing for them to say. It was more fear. I was like, okay, what happens if I don't listen to them? What happens in 2 years? Again, if I'm working in a corporate job, and 2 years from now, I think, what if I had started in 2020? You know, like Nas Daily told me, like Drew Binsky told me, like how much, you know, sadness is gonna overcome me just wondering what if. So I said, okay, fine, I'll make videos for myself. But it's going to be hard. It's going to be hard starting a YouTube channel with 0 subscribers. This was in, you know, September 2020, a year and change, right? And I was like, how am I going to do a video that I know is going to get 100 views, 200 views, when I'm used to 100,000 views or even 1 million views on CNBC's YouTube channel? So I said, the only way for me to actually do this, if I'm going to do this, I need to commit to consistency. Commitment and consistency. Those are the two things that I really like honed in on. I need to commit to 3 videos per week on my YouTube channel, no matter what, for 1 year. Because it's going to be very demoralizing after 3 weeks, 3 months, you know, to see, oh my God, I have 700 subscribers and I'm putting in 3 times as much work as I did for CNBC, right? So the only way was long-term commitment. So, and sure enough, I did it for one year. I had enough, you know, savings that I was able to hire an editor to edit my videos, which obviously takes a lot of time. But I was still able to pump out 3 videos a week. Even, you know, Christmas, New Year's, 3 videos a week. I got COVID in Turkey in March, and, you know, it was pretty bad. I wasn't vaccinated at the time, and I still managed to do a video, right? So I think committing to that, and I also told myself, don't look at the numbers. The first year, don't really look at the numbers. As long as you're growing a little bit each week or each month, you're good, you know? But don't look at the numbers, because again, after 6 months, I think I was at 2,000 subscribers, if that, right? And then, but it's that momentum, it's that domino effect. Then you start to see 10,000, 20,000, 100,000, right? And so now I'm at a point where I have a full-time editor now. I'm able to make enough money from YouTube, Facebook, TikTok, and some client deals, brand deals, things like that, where I'm in the flow. I'm in the momentum. I can, you know, this income pays for my travels. I can go to new countries. I can fly an editor, a cameraman to visit me. So I'm in a nice flow. So now my biggest fear, if I'm being honest, is becoming addicted to the numbers, right? And I see it happen with a lot of creators. Because what happens is, first of all, these numbers tell your brain, like, you did a good job, right? This Mexican food documentary, right? If it gets 1 million views, I'm like, I did well. If it gets 1,000 views, I'm like, I did poorly, right? So like, so these numbers are constantly dictating our mental, you know, our sense of self, our sense of like achievement,
Yes.
right? And
Yes.
and so we need to, and it's our art, it's our craft, you know, it's we're being vulnerable, we're putting ourselves out there. So I need to like obviously use the numbers to dictate, you know, what's working, what's not. But also I need to make sure I'm not getting too emotionally attached to those numbers. But then add on a layer, Nikki, of income, right? Now all of a sudden my income is tied to these numbers, and I can make $1,000 a month, or I can make $30,000 a month, depending on Facebook's algorithm and how good my videos are, right? So that can be very, very scary. And again, I've seen it happen to so many content creators where they just get burned out. They wake up, they check their numbers, because again, it's not just did you do a good job, but it's your livelihood, your, you know. So now I'm acutely aware of that, especially the past couple of months where I went from like 400,000 to 700,000, and the income has been growing. But I'm like, okay, just make sure that you're in love with, you know, the storytelling. And
Yeah.
I'm there, and I want to continue to be there. So when I'm in Saudi and I'm driving with a young Saudi, I'm genuinely just excited to be like, wait, so what was it like to grow up here? Oh yeah, let me hit record, right? Versus so many people I see, they're like recording and like, okay, let me think, what should I ask you? You know, do you see the difference?
Okay.
It's like
Yes.
being genuine to the craft, being genuinely curious, staying true as a storyteller. The money, the followers, that's all secondary. But
Okay.
I
I
wanted
think
to maintain. I wanted to maintain that, because you're fighting against these Silicon Valley developers that are hacking our brains, right?
right, right. Upton, this is such important information. This is like such an important notice for all the content creators out there to maintain that passion despite the numbers. Because I think, you know, even somebody like me doing this live show on Instagram every single Tuesday, right? I'm like, are people watching? Are people tuning in? Like, do people like it? Am I getting more followers? You know, do guests want to come on? Does someone with, you know, 10 million followers want to come on my show when I only have 3,000 followers? These are like very serious questions, you know, that we have to ask ourselves as content creators. And but you know, but when you go back to the passion, then you're always doing the right thing. Like if in your heart of hearts you want to be doing this, you want to be making the videos, you want to be talking to people, then that's all that matters. And I think what you mentioned earlier about that gut feeling when you were applying to different jobs after you left CNBC International, but how you were like, actually, this is not it. I don't want to go back to a 9 to 5. I don't want to go back to a big company, despite, you know, your incredible resume, right? GW, CNBC, MTV, right? You could have gone anywhere, but actually you were like, no, that's not the thing. And I think that the fact that you have that passion and you still have it, that's something for every content creator out there to remember, that it's about that, even as you continue to grow, even as the views grows, the followers grow, and everything. So thank you for sharing that, Upton. Merci, Azizam.
Khayesh Bikaram. And there's a book I recommend. It's called The War of Art. The War of Art, Stephen Pressfield. It's a very easy, short read, and he talks about that. He says to do anything other than for the love of it is essentially prostitution. And I'm like, ooh, I remember that a lot of times. Like you know, whenever I find myself like editing or voiceover or filming a video, and I'm like, I hope this gets 1 million views. I'm like, wait a minute, like, no, focus on, I'm loving the process. I'm loving doing it. And one thing that helps with that too, Nikki, is pumping out a lot of content. So for instance, on TikTok, no matter what, I post 3 videos a day. And when you're posting 3 videos a day, you don't really care so much about the views, because you're just like, okay, some, you know, one will get 1 million, one will get 1,000. It doesn't really matter. Just like on to the next, you know, continue to just fall in love with the process, the creation, the telling of the stories. So yeah.
Absolutely, absolutely. Well, thank you for sharing that, Upton. Thank you for sharing some of these people who inspired you to get into the space. I saw that our friend Nas Daily actually signed on to the live. Hey, Nasir, happy to have you. Don't know if you're still here, but shout out. As folks know, you know, Nas Daily works very closely with, you know, with Upton. He was on my show a couple weeks ago, and he's also our, you know, CEO at Nas Academy.
Did he
But
did he come in around the time that I was talking about him in our debate?
just after.
Oh, funny.
You'll
Okay.
have to watch the rerun, you know?
Yes.
Okay, Upton, we've got some questions in the chat for you. We got about 5 minutes left of the interview. I want to make sure I give shout outs to all the people who have asked you questions. So let me take a look and see what people in the chat are asking you, since we've got so many people here. I've been loving all the comments, everyone saying, Upton, come to my country, come back to Lebanon, you know, all these things. So I want to make sure we do it big for the people here. So let me ask a question from, this is from Aaron M. Field. Upton, this question asks, how do you get people to open up so freely and so readily in other countries?
Ooh, I love that. Thank you, Aaron. So I think for that, it's all about, being their friend first, being their friend. I think a lot of times if you stick a camera in someone's face, what are they gonna do? Whoa, But if you really just make a connection with them, I think the easiest way to answer that, a smile. Right? A smile, a laugh. That's the easiest, that's the closest. They say laughter is the closest distance between two people, right? So sometimes it's just like smiling and eye contact and just like, and sometimes it is playing that like I'm just a dumb tourist, I'm making a YouTube, sometimes it is a little bit of that, but just making them feel comfortable, making them feel seen, making them feel heard, and I think you have to be genuine. You cannot fake it, I mean, I remember I was talking to a guy in Iraq at a coffee shop, and I was just genuinely curious. I'm like, did you grow up here? Like, what was it like? Da, da, da. And then again, it's like, oh yeah, let me film this, and I mean, half the time they don't care that you're filming, or, it's just kind of because they're just genuinely excited to share their story. They're excited to talk to you. So I think it's, and it's a little bit of too, I think sometimes I see other people, they overestimate the importance of the camera. So I see like, I'm going to be filming, I'm a YouTuber. Is it okay if I record this conversation for my YouTube channel? It's like, I see why they do that, but I don't think that's the way to do it, because you're giving people an opportunity to process everything and be like, I don't know, do I not? And then as you're recording, how do I sound? What if I sound dumb? Can you restart? And it just becomes so much less authentic. So really, like, all the times that I'm interviewing people, the goal, and I think it usually happens, they forget the camera's there. I'm like, hey, what's up? How you doing? Da, 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 da. And then it's like, oh yeah, for my YouTube, I'm recording if it's okay. It's like, okay, yeah. And then again, back to the subject. Don't spend too much time talking about the fact that you're recording and what you're doing, because it takes them out of it, and they will reply differently. They will speak differently.
That is such good advice. So making sure that, you've checked in, you've gotten that consent. Is it okay for filming? Yeah, cool. Okay. Then moving right along, That's
camera's not even there.
helpful. Exactly. Well, shout out to Aaron for that awesome question. Also, shout out to Filipina pilot Cheska, who I saw tuned in. She was also one of my guests on the show a couple months ago. Amazing female pilot, also very cool, making amazing content on YouTube and across the interwebs. So love to see it. Everyone's tuning in for you, Upton. Everyone just wants to see what you're doing. I love it. So there's a question here from Huma and Desi saying, most people outside the United States think American food is just burgers and fries. Could you make a video on authentic American food?
Ooh, that's an amazing idea, actually. I love that. Because I even in the United States, I thought that's what it is. Except Thanksgiving, we've got turkey. So yeah, that's a really good idea. I think I would have to go like to the South for that, because I think a lot of like American food would be in the South. But yeah, it's a really good one to look into. It's like, what is truly American food? I love that. Thank you for that idea.
That's a good idea. And also, I read an article once, I don't know if it was on Huffington Post or something, that was making a very strong claim for Chinese food being American food. So there's like, that could be a very interesting video for you, Upton, trying to figure out what is American food. Is it Tex-Mex? Is it Chinese food? Like, because since we all eat those things, is it pizza?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like all
is
these
it macaroni
things.
and cheese? Yeah. I love that.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, so we got you heard it here first. New video coming.
Yes, I love that.
Oh my gosh. Okay, I know we're almost at time. We just got a couple more questions. What's another one? There's a question here from Rami Owns. I don't know if I'm saying it correctly, but Rami Owns says, how do you learn what to do in the country that you visit? So for example, in Lebanon, it's better not to pay in USD. How do you learn those things?
Well, I guess it comes from just going there. I mean, a lot of times, like, it's not like a website I use. It just comes from going there, usually I try and, connect with someone, a friend or a friend of a friend in that country before I go. And, I kind of hope they'll tell me. But, you make mistakes too. I think my first Uber ride in Lebanon, I paid on credit card, which is like an absolute no-no. And then you learn, you meet the hotel guy at the front desk or someone at a coffee shop. It's all about just going there and learning and being open, but also asking questions. I mean, I know a lot of travelers who kind of stick in their own bubble, read their book, listen to their whatever podcast, but like, so many times just at a coffee shop, you'll meet people. And most countries, if not every country, loves tourists. They love, I mean, maybe that's a broad statement, but they get excited. I mean, New York City, not so much, but like they get excited to meet people. I guess most countries that I'm going to, which are the more, off the beaten path, the non-Parises and the non-France, things like that. So I think just meeting people, staying open, and meeting people at coffee shops everywhere you go. Sometimes you meet people on the streets. It's amazing.
Yes, that curiosity is so important. It's key. It's just like, yeah, you just walk up to random people, say, hey, oh, can you help me with this? Da, 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 da. And then boom, just friendships are formed. You've got new guests for your show, new people to put on your YouTube channel. 100%. So Uptin, we're like just at the hour mark right now. The last question I'll ask you is, what's next? What can your fans, your friends, your followers, what can we expect? What should we be keeping an eye out for that you've got coming up? And how can we continue to support your epic content creation and storytelling journey?
Thank you so much. Yeah, please follow on youtube.com/Uptin. That's the one that I'm, really working to grow. Facebook.com/Uptin as well. Those are really good ways to see my stories. And thank you so much for the support. In terms of what's next, I'll be going to Brazil soon. I'll be going to El Salvador. So I'm going to hit up South America for about a month and get some content out of that. Bitcoin in El Salvador, some exciting stuff in Brazil. So yeah, kind of this digital nomad life. It's like I don't plan too much. Like I said, it's kind of go explore, see what is the story. It's like, that's what journalism is. It's like going and then asking the questions, seeing what is interesting about this. So yeah, look out for those videos coming in the next couple weeks.
Ah, so cool, so cool. Make sure you all go follow Uptin if you're not already. Uptin, I have to say, it was so good getting to know you better here on the show. I'm hoping that one day we meet. Maybe it's at the Nas Summit. Maybe it's in Tehran, Jealous. Wherever it is, I cannot wait to meet you in person one day. I know I'll see you, in course in your classes one day soon. But honestly, this has just been such a pleasure. Thank you for hopping on NIKKI BANZ Live. This was just truly such a fun and entertaining interview.
Awesome. Thank you for having me. Thank you guys for watching. And yeah, this was such a blast, Nikki. I'll talk to you soon. Thank you.
Absolutely. Thanks, Uptin. Thank you, everybody. We'll see you next Tuesday for NIKKI BANZ Live.
Bye, everyone. Bye, guys.
Bye.